You ever feel like your brain is just drowning in the daily news cycle? It's like every single headline screaming for attention, and trying to make sense of political discourse can leave you totally overwhelmed. Well, today we're throwing you a lifeline. We're diving into an absolutely brilliant document by Dr. Burke. This isn't really about partisan takes or ideology. It's a deep, strategic dive into the very mechanisms of political engagement in the U.S., viewed purely through a behavioral and psychological lens. We're essentially getting a secret decoder ring for some of the most complex dynamics playing out right now.
That's absolutely right. And that's precisely our mission with this deep dive, to systematically analyze the experiences and situations outlined in this document, stripping away the noise to review the core insights. Dr. Burke's central premise is, well, it's quite stark. The American Republic, as we understand it, survives only if its fundamental norms manage to reassert themselves, or if some profound catastrophe forces a complete societal reset. It's a powerful and, frankly, challenging framework to consider.
It really is. So let's jump right into the first core section of this document. It begins by dissecting what he identifies as a prevailing current leadership approach to political engagement. What are the signature characteristics of this specific style that Dr. Burke pinpoints?
Okay, so the document lays out 9 distinct characteristics that really define this dominant political style. First, there's a profound populist appeal. It speaks directly to a perceived, forgotten, or oppressed demographic, positioning the leader as an outsider battling entrenched elites.
Okay.
Second, it's remarkably aggressive and relentless. The strategy involves attacking first and often to keep opponents constantly off balance, treating politics as an absolute zero-sum game. Cooperation isn't just unhelpful, it's seen as a weakness.
So it's less about winning debates and more about utterly dominating the field from the outset. That's a crucial distinction.
It is, definitely. Third, there's incredible media mastery. The style demonstrates an acute understanding of media cycles, intentionally provoking coverage through controversy, and critically, valuing attention above all else. Even reframing direct attacks as proof of strength.
Attention is the currency, then.
Exactly. Fourth, it simplifies everything. Complex issues are relentlessly reduced to catchy slogans and binary choices, good versus evil, winners versus losers. These simple messages are then repeated until they completely saturate the public discourse.
It reminds me of that old advertising adage. Say it often enough and people will believe it. It's sobering to see that psychological principle at play on such a grand and often divisive scale.
Indeed, it really is. Fifth, conflicts are highly personalized. Policy disagreements are deliberately twisted into personal feuds. This creates intense loyalty among supporters and very clear enemies lists. Nicknames and ridicule aren't just sidelines, they're active political weapons.
Right.
Sixth, this style is intensely charismatic to its base. It projects an unwavering confidence even when facts might be thin, and it meticulously rewards loyalty while punishing any perceived dissent within its own ranks.
The us versus them mentality is absolutely central, isn't it? It sounds like this style isn't just about achieving political goals, but fundamentally reshaping the nature of political competition itself.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. Seventh, there's a consistent defiance of norms. Institutional traditions, long-held etiquette, they're simply ignored. Any legal, political, or moral criticism from established quarters is immediately reframed as proof of persecution or, a conspiracy against the leader.
Wow.
Eighth, it weaponizes victimhood, deftly playing both the strong man and the eternal victim of conspiracies simultaneously. It's quite a balancing act.
Yeah.
And finally, ninth, it sells identity, not policy. Campaigns are built almost entirely on grievance, nostalgia, and a powerful sense of cultural belonging rather than, say, detailed policy platforms.
What the document really highlights isn't just a list of tactics, is it? It's a meticulously constructed system. A system designed to dominate and reshape the entire political landscape. It's almost like a masterclass in political jiu-jitsu where every perceived weakness is flipped into a strength.
It truly is a comprehensive and disturbingly effective system for achieving political dominance.
Okay, so given this potent political style, what kind of counterforce would Dr. Burke suggest could actually stand a chance against it? The document then dives into what he calls the archetype for an opponent who could neutralize or defeat the president 1.1. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Right. So to effectively go toe-to-toe, an opponent would need a very specific set of traits. In terms of communication style, they'd need to speak plainly, memorably, and aggressively, much like the style they're countering.
Yeah.
They'd have to master slogans and repetition, excel at live media, sound bites, unscripted moments, and crucially, know how to turn ridicule into dominance. It's not enough to just absorb an attack. They have to flip it.
So they'd have to use the same tools, but maybe with a different aim or for a different audience.
Exactly. Or at least wield them just as effectively. Psychologically, their psychological posture would need to be fearless in confrontation, actually thriving on public conflict. They'd need to enjoy the fight, frame attacks against them as validation, not injury, and ruthlessly leverage their opponent's weaknesses in real time.
No backing down.
None. For their public persona, they'd need mass appeal, especially to emotionally driven voters, be relatable and authentic to their tribe, and proudly position themselves as anti-elite or anti-establishment.
Another outsider then, but perhaps one that resonates with a different emotional frequency or a different group.
Quite possibly. From a strategic mindset, they would need to understand and manipulate media cycles for constant relevance. They control the narrative through provocation rather than, detailed policy nuance, and build a durable base using loyalty, identity, and grievance.
So mirroring the strategy again in some ways.
In many ways, yes. In cultural positioning, they'd be unafraid to engage in direct cultural warfare, capable of generating memes and viral moments, engaging in rapid response trolling almost, and framing themselves as the only true barrier against chaos or the designated enemy.
Wow.
Finally, for endurance, they'd need to be incredibly thick-skinned, resilient to legal, moral, or institutional attacks, operate from a playbook of dominance, not reconciliation, and be willing to endure years of sustained hostility without retreating. In essence, this archetypal opponent, well, it features simple, emotional, aggressive communication, a combative, never-conceding psychology, a charismatic, polarizing, authentic persona, a mastery of media chaos, leveraging identity strategically, an unapologetic engagement in cultural battles, and just unyielding resilience.
It's fascinating how specific that profile is, isn't it? Dr. Burke even gives us some hypothetical profiles, emphasizing they're not existing politicians. He suggests things like a celebrity with populist instincts, maybe a political version of Joe Rogan, or a business mogul with an outsized personality. Or even a culture warrior from entertainment with mass market appeal who isn't afraid of controversy. It makes you wonder who could possibly embody all of that. Now, let's pivot to a truly critical question that the document tackles head-on. If both political parties were to fully immerse themselves in this level of aggressive, zero-sum, Trump-style political conflict, what might that do to the social landscape in the U.S.? Dr. Burke doesn't pull any punches here.
He certainly doesn't. The document provides a pretty sobering analytical breakdown of the likely consequences across several key dimensions. First, polarization would harden into tribalism. Political disagreement would cease to be about policy. It would become exclusively about identity, loyalty, and sheer survival.
Oh, wow.
Families, workplaces, entire communities would fracture even deeper, and any hint of moderation would be seen as betrayal.
It's striking how this transforms political disagreement from a policy debate into an almost existential group identity, isn't it? What are the long-term implications for civic institutions when that sense of tribalism solidifies like that?
Well, the document suggests that this tribalism directly feeds the second consequence, an escalation of cultural and regional division. States and cities would increasingly align culturally and politically, essentially governing as if the other side simply doesn't exist, almost like silos.
Right.
This would inevitably lead to increased calls for nullification of federal authority, maybe even the creation of parallel legal frameworks,
Right.
making the U.S. operate more like two nations awkwardly sharing one flag.
That's a disturbing image.
It is. Third, we'd likely see the normalization of authoritarian tendencies. Each party would start justifying extreme measures, things like speech restrictions, protest crackdowns, surveillance, maybe even judicial manipulation, as absolutely necessary to defeat the existential threat posed by the other side.
So the ends justify the means, taken to an extreme.
Pretty much. And this would relentlessly erode civil liberties and dangerously desensitize the population to authoritarianism, as long as it's being wielded by their side. Fourth, social trust would collapse further. Institutions like courts, elections, law enforcement, education, they'd all be viewed as inherently partisan. Citizens would begin to reject objective outcomes if they're unfavorable, leading to conspiracy narratives replacing verifiable facts as the primary currency of public discourse.
That's a terrifying thought. If facts themselves become partisan, what foundation do we even have left for common ground?
It leads directly to the fifth consequence identified, an increase in political violence. The rhetoric normalizes conflict as righteous, maybe even necessary. Militant groups could gain legitimacy. Individual acts of violence might be framed as patriotism. Domestic terrorism would undoubtedly increase. Sixth, there'd be an acceleration of an exit mentality. Individuals, companies, institutions, they'd start choosing jurisdictions based on ideological comfort. This would accelerate internal migration, and it would politicize economic decisions. Think boycotts, investment shifts, leading to a kind of de facto geographic separation.
People voting with their feet, but on a massive ideological scale.
Exactly. And finally, seventh, the analysis predicts short-term winners, long-term decline. Parties might achieve temporary victories through these scorched earth tactics, but no victory would ever truly last. The defeated side would simply refuse legitimacy, and the cycle would endlessly repeat, inevitably degrading America's global standing, its internal stability, and its economic strength.
It feels like a domino effect, where each consequence just knocks over the next one, leading to a truly systemic breakdown. The interconnectedness of these potential impacts is what really stands out to me. It's not just one bad thing, it's how they feed each other.
Yeah.
This analysis begs a question, though. Are there historical parallels that shed light on these dynamics? Does the document point to other times or places where we've seen this kind of political evolution or devolution play out?
It does, and the parallels drawn are quite chilling. The document identifies similar dynamics in three key historical periods: Bleeding Kansas in the 1850s.
Right before the Civil War.
Yes. Weimar Germany in the 1920s.
Leading up to.
And Yugoslavia in the 1990s. All of these instances, while vastly different in their specific context, shared core features: tribal politics, a decay of institutional trust, radicalization fueled by deep-seated grievance, the framing of violence is necessary for justice, and ultimately an inevitable systemic rupture. These aren't just academic footnotes. They serve as powerful cautionary tales about where these dynamics can lead.
Absolutely. And Dr. Burke doesn't just analyze the past. The document also maps out plausible futures if this escalation continues. What are these potential scenario paths for the U.S.?
Okay, so the document outlines 5 plausible futures, and it's careful to emphasize these are plausible, not definitive predictions, for the U.S. under escalating political combat, maybe between 2025 and 2035. The first, and the one tagged with the highest likelihood, is the path of managed decay, or a cold civil war. This scenario sees extreme partisanship become normalized. Red and blue states govern increasingly as separate nations, even under a federal umbrella.
Functionally separate.
Functionally separate, yes. National elections are viewed as existential crises, social trust collapses, political violence remains episodic, maybe simmering, but doesn't escalate to organized civil war. The result: a weakened U.S. global power, paralyzed domestic governance, and a fractured civic identity.
So a slow, grinding dissolution rather than a sudden, violent explosion. That's a stark image itself.
It is. The second is the path of open conflict, or hot civil conflict, which carries a medium likelihood. This would probably require a distinct trigger event, maybe an assassination, or a stolen election claim taken to an extreme, something that really ignites things. Armed groups would escalate attacks, states might openly defy federal orders, and martial law could become a real possibility in places. The result would be a partial breakdown of federal authority, hardened urban-rural divides, leading to what some might call civil unrest or even low-level insurgency.
Much more chaotic.
Much more. Third, with a medium-high likelihood, is the path of soft secession, or balkanization without war. In this future, the federal government becomes largely a figurehead. States align their policies with ideological coalitions, interstate cooperation dramatically deteriorates, and legal systems diverge significantly. The U.S. would technically remain whole, but operate like a confederation of warring micronations, deepening economic fractures, foreign adversaries eagerly exploiting the disunity. You can see how that plays out.
So a country existing only in name, divided in almost every other practical way.
In many ways, yes. Fourth, with a low-medium likelihood, is the path of authoritarian resolution, or one side wins. This would likely be triggered by, say, a massive electoral landslide combined with maybe a Supreme Court capture and a consolidation of federal enforcement power. One side effectively consolidates control through legal manipulation. Dissent is ruthlessly reframed as extremism, civil liberties curtailed, and functional democracy effectively ends. Any resistance would be forced underground.
A decisive but deeply undemocratic outcome.
Precisely. And finally, fifth, with a low likelihood, is the path of catastrophe-driven reset, or shared crisis restores unity. This would require a truly severe external shock, a major war, an unprecedented environmental catastrophe, maybe an even worse pandemic. Something so overwhelming it forces the suspension of partisan combat and compels national unity simply for survival.
A common enemy, basically.
A massive common enemy or crisis, yes. This scenario offers a slim possibility of constitutional reform or federal restructuring. But the document notes it could still degrade into other scenarios if mishandled in the aftermath. It's not a guaranteed fix. To briefly summarize, Dr. Burke's analysis highlights that in these various plausible futures, we see different levels of stability, violence, democratic function, and effective governance. Managed decay offers fragile stability, weak democracy. Hot conflict means a breakdown into violence. Soft secession results in fragmentation. Authoritarian resolution implies forced stability at the cost of democracy. And a crisis reset offers a really difficult path toward potential rebuilding.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into Dr. Burke's analysis. Really powerful stuff. It paints such a stark picture of the potential roads ahead for the U.S., doesn't it? The core finding seems crystal clear. Once both sides fully adopt this combative zero-sum model of political engagement, the traditional center, it just cannot hold without significant, almost unimaginable structural change.
That's the critical takeaway, I think. The analysis suggests the most probable outcomes are either a long, grinding decay into dysfunction, a less likely but certainly possible violent, rapid break, or maybe a temporary unity brought about only by truly immense disaster, which you hope never happens.
Right.
The document concludes with a powerful, urgent thought. The Republic, as we've known it, survives only if its fundamental norms manage to reassert themselves or if a catastrophe forces a complete reset.
That leaves us with a lot to consider, doesn't it? What does this analysis make you consider about the role of everyday engagement in shaping these potential futures? How do norms reassert themselves, not just in Washington, but, in our own communities and conversations? It's a lot to mull over, and certainly a topic worth continuing your own deep dive into.